Welcome to the Filipino American Women Project, also known as TFAW Project for short, a podcast show that features stories and life lessons told by American women of Filipino descent. We're your co-hosts, Jen Amos.
And I'm Nani Dominguez.
And thank you for joining us.
If today's conversation resonates with you, text us and let us know at 415-484-8329.
And if you want to show us some love, buy us boba at buymeacoffee.com/Jen and Nani.
It says coffee, but we love boba. Again, that's www.buymeacoffee.com/Jen and Nani.
Awesome. With that said, thank you all for your love and support.
Now let's get into the show.
All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to a bonus and final episode of the Filipino American Women Project for 2021. I am your creator and co-host, Jen Amos. And of course, as always, I have my amazing co-host with me, Nani Dominguez. Nani, welcome to, I know we keep saying we're going to do a bonus or not, but welcome. I'm pretty sure I'm saying this is the final bonus episode of the year. Welcome back to the Filipino American Women Project.
Welcome back, everyone. Hello, hello.
Yes. And if you are joining us via video, you probably noticed that we have been nominated for...
Wrong way.
Yeah, there we go. Right. I think we're right there. We have been nominated for the Asian American Podcasters Golden Crane Podcast Awards for 2021. At the time of this recording, we don't know if we won yet. However, if you stick around to the end of this episode, you will find out if we did win. And if we did, you will be able to hear our acceptance speech, which Nani and I actually pre-recorded before this. And we're just like, okay, we did that. We checked it off.
Yes, done.
just did that. And yeah, so we're really excited and we're really grateful to the Asian American Podcasters Association for hosting their second annual Golden Crane Podcast Awards. I actually got an email, Nani, of them saying that if you're receiving this email, this actually means that we selected you. And, there are some award ceremonies where if anyone applies, everyone's a finalist, but they actually said, oh, we actually turned down some people. And so to know that we were actually handpicked to be a nominee again for the second year in a row means a lot. It's nice to know that we're being recognized, especially in, when you think about the Asian diaspora, Filipinos are not necessarily what comes top of mind. So to be recognized in the Asian community really means a lot. And I'm curious if you had any thoughts about that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the mission of the association to just, bring attention to and really praise Asian American podcasts is so important because visibility, and that's something that's always been an issue in our community. So I really appreciate them for the efforts that they make to really standardize themselves and, establish themselves as an association to be, judging us basically. Not judging us, but, praising our work. So
yeah, acknowledging us and celebrating us and everything.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's actually quite interesting because I recently binge watched Bling Empire on Netflix. And it's basically kind of a continuation, but it's not really directly related to Crazy Rich Asians. And so this was an actual reality show of actual affluent Asians in LA.
Oh.
And it follows their whole story. There's about 8 episodes. What I really liked about it, first and foremost, Nani, is that it showed the diversity of Asians and affluent Asians. There was successful Chinese. There was a Korean model on there. There was Vietnamese people representation. But get this, the only Filipino representation was a server at the restaurant they were being filmed at.
What?
And yeah, so it was very interesting to know, at least in this representation in this show, that, the only Filipino representation happened to be a server in a restaurant.
Yeah.
And the people that were sitting there, the main characters, they were like, he's Filipino. He doesn't look Filipino. He doesn't look Filipino. They were saying.
Yeah.
And it
exactly.
was, and why, so once again.
Yeah. And why do they say that?
Yeah. So once again, it's, again, to be involved with something such as the Asian American Podcast Association, to be recognized as our show, as the title it is, Filipino American Woman Project, really means a lot. So anyway, stay tuned till the end of this episode to find out if we win. If we do, you'll hear our acceptance speech. And again, it was just fun to overall celebrate Asian American podcasting excellence. Our next update is it's our birthday month. So this has been quite an interesting year. And Last week I had the fortune of once again continuing my new tradition of celebrating my birthday by myself. So if anyone followed me last year, I got an Airbnb to myself for 2 nights. And so I had an entire day to myself to really celebrate my birthday. And I also want to share that I have just been exhausted like for most of this month. And that's a conversation for Chismis with Jen and Nani on why. The reason why I mention that is because, Nani often handles our newsletter. She often manages like the opening message and, the details of updating whatever we need in the newsletter. And little did I realize, it took me till today, the time of this recording on Monday, to realize that Nani had shared a dedication to me for my birthday. And it meant so much, Nani. So I just want to, thank you for that. There were some things that you said that just really meant a lot. I think one of the lines that you said is that, I'm someone that can model a healthy example of oneself and
relationship with oneself. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Obviously, we're very tired the time that we're recording this. It's the end of the year, y'all. We're over it, But I appreciate you saying that because, lately I've been talking very extensively with my new therapist. That's a whole conversation for another time as well. I'm on my 3rd therapist in just the last couple of weeks, whole conversation.
Wow.
But anyway, it's been really validating for me to share what I've been going through and for her to point out like how much I'm actually going through, but also like, I guess the tools that I've developed to take care of myself in this turbulent times for myself. Yeah. And so for you, Nani, to once again remind me of that, it means a lot because it's, it's hard to know that you're doing good for yourself and for others if you're in the thick of it. So I just want to say thank you for once again. And this is what I said in the newsletter. So everyone, you can check the show notes of this episode to read that last newsletter. When I decided to give you a shout out for your
Yes,
birthday,
you did.
To let you know that like what you mean for me is that feeling of validation, is that you mirror back what I'm putting out there. Like I feel seen because of the way you listen and because of the way you respond. So thank you. And happy birthday to you
Happy birthday to you. Yes. Thank you. I meant everything I said. And I do really admire that you handle adversity really well, if that's, probably not the best word, but you have developed a lot of tools and a lot of things under your belt that you can use when you feel that way. So it's not like you're just sitting there feeling sorry for yourself and stuck in this kind of like feedback loop. So I really respect that about you. And I think that that's something, like I said in the newsletter, that we can all learn from.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, of course.
It's great to hear that right now, especially now that the year is unwinding and I'm finally in a place to just like chill.
Reflect,
I have straight up been binge eating and binge watching, like no joke.
Hello.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely that time. I was like, you know what? It's my birthday month. Like it's the holiday season. And actually, one thing I want to share is for the first time in a long time, I'm really grateful that my birthday happens to be around the holidays. I used to actually resent that because I always felt like it would overlap. People would be like, oh, this is your birthday and holiday present. Yeah. And somehow this year, having celebrated my birthday by myself and driving around town and seeing all the Christmas lights, it made me feel like, wow, like it's my birthday, and these lights, they're not for me, but it feels like it, not like there's no other time of the year where you can celebrate your birthday and see holiday lights and like everyone's houses in the cities. And I'm like, yeah. And so it felt different this year, considering how I've struggled with seasonal depression, like literally every year, and how I've always felt, small around my birthday. And I thought I'd mention that. It's that kind of the year where it's like, like for the first time in a long time, I feel grateful and I feel chill and I'm allowed to binge eat and binge watch and take it easy.
Exactly. I'm so glad that you feel that way. And I'm trying to feed off of that energy because as we speak, I'm eating this really good strawberry shortcake stuffed cookie.
It sounds
really good.
That sounds amazing. Yeah. So to our listeners, whether you're listening or watching us, yeah, we're like toning it down for the year. Like I don't feel as like high tempo as I used to when we normally have these conversations. I'm just like,
not at all.
Yeah.
Super low energy.
That's why I'm giggling because I'm like, this is hilarious. Like how we've gotten to this point. And we know how exhausted we are. And, Nani, for you, I'm happy that you were able to celebrate your birthday early this past weekend, apparently.
Yeah.
You were able to, enjoy it the way that you wanted to.
I was. Yeah, it was really nice. So it was just perfect for my comfort level. I didn't go too far, but I got far away, enough. And I basically just watched my baby like on the monitor the whole time I was gone. But yeah, no, it worked out. It was really nice and much needed. So back feeling better. My birthday is actually tomorrow, but yeah, I'm here just chilling.
Yes. There's a part of me that hopes that we carry this energy into the new year where it's just like, it's okay. It's okay to just be chill.
Slow temp.
And take it
slow
easy.
pace. Yeah.
We'll see how it goes. But so far I'm like, I'm tired of like living the fast pace and constantly like shifting ground beneath me and constantly trying to like establish a new foundation. I'm like, I'm done. Like I'm good.
Yeah.
I just like literally no joke. I've like this morning, we like don't always do this, but I woke up and I was like, I want donuts. Like I literally woke up. I was like, I want donuts. So we like drive at like 7 a.m. in the morning.
Yes, indulge. It's the
I
holidays.
stuff my face. I binge watch Netflix. I get tired. I fall asleep, and then I sleep for the afternoon.
Yeah.
That's how
and
I've
it's
been feeling.
It's a nice life. Trust me, I miss that.
Yeah, I believe you. So I will rest for the both of us.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yes. Awesome. Well, yes, happy birthday to us. And of course, to all the other December babies and holiday babies who often don't feel recognized. I hear you. I feel you. I get you. And I hope that, you get to a place like me where it's like, you know what? Like, I'm actually happy now. Like, I'm happy that, I'm one of the rare birthdays that get to enjoy holiday lights around this time of the year.
Yep.
So anyway, moving on. We actually had part 1 of our book review with the book Little Manila Is in the Heart, written by Dawn Mabalon, with your best friend, Caitilin Damacion, recently, earlier on this month. And at the time of this recording, we have released it on our private podcast show, Chismes with Jen and Nani. And that was a really fun conversation, Nani. Like, I feel like I studied really extensively for that. I mean, part 1 is a whole book in itself,
Yeah, pretty much.
And I even still feel like, because the episode that's coming out, it's about an hour long. There's a part of me that feels like, man, I feel like we could have talked more. But like, that's how amazing, that book is. And so I put some show notes together already. I thought I'd read a couple of points here. But, one thing that we pointed out in our discussion is that we have had over a century's worth of documented history in America. And Dawn Mabalon has challenged other historians by writing this book, by saying, I challenge the way that other people have written our history or not written it, by making this book exist.
And that's so important. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was amazing book review.
It was a nice little refresher. The book is way too long to go, the full thing and then do one review at the end, because it would take forever. You guys would never hear from us again until a very long time. But yeah, it was great. I think this book is a great next step to the first one that we read, because it kind of it includes a lot of like excerpts or explanations about specific parts in that book that like we even talked about, or characters and their kind of personalities or behavior patterns and, those things that are passed down to us. So I think that it's also interesting to go from the Filipino male perspective in like the 1920s, 1930s to, more of a modern day perspective from the Filipino woman specifically, on the events of those books. So that book.
And in addition to that, one thing that really stood out to me as I re-listened to our conversation was where that need or where that kind of default action to just work comes from. Like, when all else fails, work, be productive, be action oriented. And I see that in my mom. I see that in my family. And I have especially seen that in myself lately with all the chaos of all the interesting experiences of my personal life. I have found work to be my safe zone. And so it's really interesting to read it from a historical perspective, why we default to that, why we default to being productive all the time.
Yeah, it explains. I mean, I think that that's something we talk about a lot in our interviews. I think the last time was even with like my auntie when she was talking about what Filipino culture means to her and how it lies heavy on like work ethic that we have. And again, like you, I see that in my dad, my grandma, my grandpa, all my family members and to think about why they're like that. It's like, it's hard to find the words to verbalize something like that. And so this book really helps you develop the language.
Yeah. And one thing I found most special about our conversation that surprised me, and I'm sure it surprised you, Nani, was when Caitlin shared her father's poem or one of her father's poems to us, because he has direct experience with the history that's mentioned in this book.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really special too. Growing up, she had always told me that he writes poetry. And I think that that's where she gets her like book nerdish behaviors from. I remember he worked in a bookstore and she would always be reading and going there to visit him. And so they were happy. I think that was a big part of their relationship, So that was very special for her to share that with us. And for me to actually get to hear one of his poems instead of just hear about it,
Yeah. I think that must have been a fun experience for you to, in a sense, learn something new about your best friend, right? It's like you've known each other for so long. It's like, oh, but I didn't know that. I didn't know what that would be like, or like that. Have you heard one of his poems before? Was that the first time you were hearing him?
Yeah, that was the first time. So it was, definitely really special.
I love it. Yeah, it was a very special moment for all of us, I think.
Yes.
And so with that said, just so you all know, that conversation is now available, episode 19, which is titled, and actually I said this while we were recording, it's titled Identity is Intimately Tied to Your Memory. And that's what you referenced in the book, Nani.
The quote.
Yes. And so this is available now, episode 19 on Chismis with Jen and Nani. We'll provide the information in the show notes for you. Love for you to listen to it. And also we'd love for you to join us in our book club. All you have to do is visit us at buyusboba.com and buy us 1 cup of boba and you're in. That's it. It's that easy. So if you want to support us, feel free to do that. Otherwise, all of our replays of our conversations will be available on Chismis with Jen and Nani. Actually, right now, what I want to do is play a snippet of that conversation. And so without further ado, here is a snippet of first 14, 15 minutes of our conversation. Enjoy. All right. Well, hey, everyone. Welcome back to an exclusive episode here at Chismis with Jen and Nani, brought to you by the Filipino American Women Project. I'm your creator and co-host, Jen Amos. And as always, I have my co-host with me, Nani Dominguez. Nani, welcome back. And Hero, our special guest, Hero. Welcome back to the both of you, Nani and Hero.
Baby Hero is making a cameo again. So hello.
Yes.
Welcome back, everyone.
Yes. And of course, we are extremely excited because this is really the second episode, I think, of doing our book club, or really the start of it. And so, Nani, would you like to introduce really the person that made this possible, that inspired us, and more importantly, is keeping us accountable to do this book club? Would you like to introduce your best friend?
Yes, my beautiful best friend, Caitilin Damacion. She is spearheading this book club process and here to offer some really great insight on the next book that we are reading. And if you guys read your emails, I think we sent out a notice that we are reading Little Manila Is in the Heart, our next book in our book study iteration from the first one that we did, which was America is in the Heart, the Filipino American rite of passage, written by none other than Carlos Bulosan. So this is kind of a thing that we're doing here. And yes, excited to get into part 1 today.
Without further ado, Caitilin, welcome back to the Filipino American Women Project, as well as our exclusive podcast show, Chismis with Jen and Nani.
Happy to be here, yes. Hi, guys. As Nani and Jen just said, I am Caitilin, the resident book nerd here. I'm very excited to be here, very excited to be reading, very excited to be talking once again in community about these super important books that we are all, well, at least for this one, Manila is in the Heart, is a first time go around for all of us. So we are reading this with new and open eyes, just like any of you who would be reading this for the first time. And we are so happy to be guiding you through this process, and I'm inviting you to do it with us, because we are literally having the time of our lives, while at the same time, this is a dense book. We are doing some dense reading here, but as you will witness, we're having a lot of fun doing it. So I hope you guys can join us as we do this.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much, Caitilin, for joining us. I can't emphasize that enough. I remember when we were brainstorming what the next book was going to be for us, and I naturally just chose Little Manila Is in the Heart, one, because it was on Kindle. And so I didn't have to get the physical book and have to actually read in the traditional sense. But 2, it had the same title as America is in the Heart. And little did I realize that there was a ton of similarities. I mean, Dawn Mabalon, who had written this book, And you reminded me this in our last talk about it, Caitlin, that she heard about the book when she was at UCLA and they had recommended they read America's in the Heart when she was, in her Filipino class. And little did she know that her dad, was it friend, I think best friend or her uncle really happened to be one of, happened to be, written in the book, in Carlos Bulison's book as Carlo. Is it Carlo or Carlos? I'm trying to remember.
Claro.
Oh, Claro. Thank you. Yeah. As Claro in the book. And so in kind of reflecting on the introduction of this book, Dawn didn't realize that she was literally living history, and she had been living history her entire life in Stockton. And it only dawned her when, again, she read America's in the Heart. Just so you guys know, if you're watching via video, all of us here, Nani, Caitlin, and I have taken copious notes to really dissect and interpret this book for you. Of course, I want to start by saying, I wrote this to make sure I say this out loud. First and foremost, we are not like official historians. We're not like Stacy level historians. And so all that being said, really what we're doing is giving our interpretations, our observations of this book. And we want to encourage you to, hopefully this conversation will really entice you to actually read the book. It is a heavy read. That is why we are dissecting this one part at a time. But I'm telling you, I read through the first part twice just because it was so heavy. It was so much information. And I actually learned a lot more the second time around. And that's just something that I felt like I needed to do. Knowing that this was a Filipina American author, I felt like I owed it to her to really read it and understand it.
I think that's something that we also discussed a little bit in our last talk when we were kind of introing this book, was that this is written by a Filipina American, a Filipina historian, which is really significant just because, obviously, starting with, as we'll dive into when we read this book, the amount of Filipinas in the Filipino American community was very, very small. This really started off as the Bachelor Society. And so that, this woman is at the forefront of, really chronicling our history and making our history part of the larger American history and part of, our education is really important. And we felt all, really strong feelings about, wanting to continue that torch and continue the flame of her work. And so really, put a spotlight on that. So I think it is, we're doing our due diligence here, and I'm excited to be doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the reason why I'm sort of having us repeat ourselves from the last recording is just because, at least for me, I feel like I had a better understanding reading it the second time around. And it's interesting because I've been able to pieces of my past, when I was in college and I actually was learning Filipino American culture, because I learned the difference between Filipino American and Filipino history. I realized there was a stark difference between the two. But it's interesting to really digest this and start being able to connect the pieces from my past from a decade ago to realize oh, I understand it now. Because at the time I felt afraid that, oh, I'm learning this, but I'm going to forget it. But I realized I guess thanks to the brain and the amazingness of it is I'm able to have more of a connection with what I learned in the past to really appreciate how hard it is to put a book like this together, And so I want to turn it over to Nani while Hero is, being good to us, and get your thoughts, your initial thoughts.
Yeah, no, what you said made me think of one of the quotes, or maybe it's not a quote, just something that she says in the first part of the book, which is I think it's even on the first page, which is, I didn't realize that it was history at the time. At the time, it was just another day in the life. And looking back on it now, however old she was, I think she might have been in her 40s or around there when she passed away. And so at whatever point she wrote this book, it's wow, I look back on my life, which I just thought was memories that meant nothing to anybody else. And now this is literally history. I have to document it. It's history. And it makes me think of, so she also mentions in part one that there are three main themes about this book, one of them being the politics of historical memory and the ways in which we remember and forget the history of community. And I think that that's really interesting and something that I am just so grateful for her to have documented and elaborated on so thoroughly, because in thinking about our childhood memories or the stories that our families pass down or what we've learned in community, we sometimes, I think, can have this syndrome of not feeling like our history is important or worthy of analysis, which is another thing that she says in there, because we don't see it recognized really anywhere else. In school or even this book club, as an example, this is something that we've taken up by our own intention. It's not like an assignment from a school project or anything like that. And so, to make this information and just these oral histories, to put them down so that other people in other generations that have other accessibilities, can do things with it is so amazing. Sorry, someone else go.
Yeah. Well, we got Nani for a little bit.
Yeah, how you mentioned, specifically, I forgot that Dawn, spent the time to really recognize and pay attention to the fact that, history, we have history by winners and then history, from below, which is the history of the people. And something that, was really impressed upon me when we read even America's in the Heart was how far back the Pinoy, Pinay, Filipino American history stretches. So this book literally starts at the beginning of the 20th century. So it starts, I think, the first date she throws out there is 1901, starts, with the Philippine-American War. And after reading, not just Carlos Bulosan's work, but reading this, which is a historical text, it really impresses upon you, oh my goodness, how much we do matter, how much we have been a part of this American fabric, how far, our history is stretching now. That's over 120 years. Like, this is over a century's worth of history now. Yeah. And the fact, especially, that this book is written in so much of our Filipino-American history, takes place within California. It takes place in Stockton, which is what, Patricia, or what, Nani, 15 minutes from where we are, so to see wow, so much of the birth of our history and our culture is right here outside of our doorstep. I almost have, that aha moment like Dawn had, where you're like, oh my gosh, I've been sleeping on my own history, which has been so available to me this whole time. And even this book. So I picked up, the text version because I am a book nerd and I like to feel the pages and to ear the pages. And I picked it up from the San Francisco Public Library, which has a Filipino reading room, a Filipino American history reading room. So they have all these texts, dedicated literally to the Filipino American history. And it just feels so cool to, go there, to dive into it, to pick up one of the texts, to be, disseminating it and to be sharing it with culture is wow, to continue this legacy on is really important work. And at the same time, it kind of gives you the chills, to feel wow, I'm part of history. Because what's cool about this is that in some ways, because it has been overlooked so much, there's still so much work to be done. And in a lot of ways, the work that we're doing right now is kind of at the forefront of that, because there's still so much work to be done, especially from the Pinay perspective, which is really cool because like what we did with the last book, we really had to create, the narratives and the stories for women, because women characters were so far and few and in between within America's in the Heart. And I think we'll find the same when we're reading Little Manila's in the Heart. Very rarely are there those women's stories to, kind of pick up on. So we're going to have to kind of piece together, okay, this is what was happening with the men at the time. So what do we think the effects were, the repercussions were on the Pinay community? So I'm looking forward to doing that with y'all.
Yeah, I think that I read in the part 1 of this book that we're reviewing today that between 1920 and 1929, the ratio of Filipinos to Filipinas, Filipino men to Filipino women, was 14-1. It was 93% male. And so I think that also puts a lot into context, or at least one theme that I kind of picked up on throughout this part 1, the first 3 chapters, was really painting the picture of the life for Filipino male immigrants and how lonely it was, and how because of that extremely imbalanced sex ratio, it was nearly impossible for them to, make families on larger scales and, settle here that way. But the other thing that I was going to end on, which you touched upon, is that, these are the histories of the Filipino men, of course, and what were the women doing. And in Carlos Bulosan's story, we were really trying to fill in those spots and stuff. And what I think Dawn is basically saying in another quote that she shares is identity is intimately tied to your memory. And so our memory is what informs us of, who we are and how we identify and how we connect with others and find community. But that is history. Just like Dawn was saying, it was just another day in the life for her, which is now she's realizing is this rich history. That's also the story of your life, And that's also the beauty of doing this book club. And, even if we're documenting our experiences in a different way, i.e. via oral storytelling and reviewing other people's stories on this podcast, however you can document it, do it, because one day you'll look back and be like, wow, that's some really rich history.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm most excited about, really giving our community the ammo to understand from a historical perspective why we have the imposter syndrome, why we feel like we're not allowed to take space. I mean, literally, we were removed in a sense. I mean, when Little Manila was gentrified for a gas station at McDonald's and erasing a lot of Stockton history, I hope that in reading this book and hearing us talk about it, you understand, like, yeah, it's very valid that you feel like you don't belong here. You feel like you're taking up too much space because, and according to American history, like, we weren't allowed to take up space. I mean, at first we were national wards, we were allowed to be here, even above like Chinese and Japanese people, to actually like being offered a one-way ticket to go back to the Philippines. And, even politicians pushing for us to be aliens in America. Yeah, that is a part of our history. There's a lot of reason why we feel like we're not supposed to take up space here. And so I'm just really grateful to be doing this with both of you, to be reading this book together, again, written by a Filipina American author. And hopefully, again, like I said, giving you all the ammo to understand why you feel the way that you do, and hopefully doing something with it, now that you have that knowledge. All right. And there you have it. That is our discussion of part 1 of Little Manila Is in the Heart by Dawn Mabalon with Nani's best friend, Caitlin. And I think that's it, Nani. I think that's our conversation for the year. I kind of wish we could sound a little more enthusiastic, but you and I shared this at the beginning of our conversation. Like, we're done. We're done with 2021. And it's not that we're ungrateful. I think we're just exhausted. And it really took a lot for me to even want to do a recording. But I was like, you know what? This is the final one of the year. And one thing that I find is that when I show up for these things, I never regret it. And so this is really the last time you'll see me via video in 2021. And I just want to, thank you all. Like, happy holidays, Merry Christmas. We love and appreciate you all. We hope that during this time that the episode gets released, this is something that you needed. Maybe you were missing us, and surprise, we're here. And we appreciate you. And we hope that, even this episode alone gives you some comfort or a sense of company during this time, as things are still opening up and, it's still a weird time. It's still a weird time.
Yeah, we wanted to just make sure that we got an episode out before the end of the year wraps up, to say thank you and happy holidays to you guys. So even if we are exhausted and like not in the mood to do this today, we, want to make sure that we recognize you for supporting us and being here all year to just be on our journeys with us. So thank you. Happy holidays. We love you. And we will see you in 2022.
Yes. And thank you for loving us anyway. Thank you for loving us and watching this from beginning to end and understanding. Like, y'all worked hard this year. We did. We worked hard this year, Nani. We put a lot, considering all the things that happened in our personal lives. And so I'm really grateful for this. I'm grateful to document this. And, like we just said, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, have a happy new year. And we'll see you all in 2022. Love you all.
All right. Hey, everybody. Jen Amos here. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of the episode to get an update on the Golden Crane Awards held by the Asian American Podcasters Association. So, for the second year in a row, we have received an honorable mention. And considering everything, and I always like to say, more details in upcoming Just Miss with Jen and Nani episodes, which you can have access to if you become a member on biasboba.com. But, with everything that has happened this year in 2021, it just means so much to have our work recognized for the second year in a row at the Golden Crane Awards. So thank you to Lee and Andy and to all the judges who organized and helped, listen to all of the nominees' podcast shows to decide, who wins what. receiving the honorable mention for a second year in a row means so much to us. And so with that said, Nani and I actually did a pre-recording of our acceptance speech, which we had submitted ahead of time in case we weren't able to be there live. It was actually Nani's birthday, the day that the awards ceremony took place. So happy belated birthday, Nani. I just want to thank you all again so much for your continual support. We hope that you all enjoy the holiday season, and we look forward to reconnecting with all of you again in 2022. Remember, if you want to hear our updates and when we're going to be back, because we don't have a clear date on that yet, remember to subscribe to our newsletter, which you can check it out in the show notes of this episode or visiting our website, tfaproject.com. All right, with that said, here is our acceptance speech. Enjoy and happy holidays.
Wow. Oh my goodness. To the Asian American Podcasters Golden Crane Awards, thank you so much. I'm Jen Amos, the creator and co-host of the Filipino American Women Project. And of course, is my amazing co-host, Nani Dominguez, who's been with me for, 130 plus episodes now. I'm really at a loss of words. It's been a crazy year for the both of us individually. And I really just want to say thank you.
Yes. Thank you to all of our listeners. Thank you to Jen. Thank you to our friends and family who have supported us over the course of the pandemic in this last year and set the foundation for us to keep making the show.
Yes, thank you to our editor, Dennis, for making us sound amazing. Thank you to Patricia, who helps us with behind the scenes, especially with social media. And thank you to our interns at the Bulosan Center. Shout out to Stacey Salinas, co-founder of the Bulosan Center at UC Davis. And of course, to you, the listener. Thank you so much for your support. And we're just so honored to receive this on your behalf.